10 minutes. All right. Okay, how do you go? Glad everybody came out tonight. And well, how many new people are here again? That did not come here last week? Oh, just a few. Okay, all right. So last week was really just spent setting people up. It seemed like most of the time we spent setting up, and we didn't really get to really learn that much or do that much. So that's what I want to do. If there are problems with setting up, just listen. I think you'll get a lot more out of it from learning and listening, and you can always set up in your own computers. Okay. Okay. So let me give you the big picture first of why Dash. What is Dash? Okay. Dash is really really interesting idea, a concept, and it's a really interesting product, and what it's meant for. So there's always been visualization in the Python world. I mean, it started with Matplotlib, and Matplotlib came from MATLAB, I believe. It was inspired by MATLAB. And Matplotlib is, when everybody thinks of working for visualizations in their notebooks. So that's one level of visualization, and it worked for quite a long time. People were really happy to have that, except that Matplotlib just creates static files. They're image files, they're PNGs or something like that. That once they're created, that's it. I mean, the next time if your data changes, or you want to do something different, you have to go back to the program and rerun everything to create that file. Okay? That's what is a static file. You can't. There's no interaction with it. Okay. Then Plotly came along, and there are some other products, by the way. Plotly is a company. I think it's a Canadian company, and their idea was to come out with a charting package that works with JavaScript, R, and Python. However, their biggest users is definitely the Python world. And their charting package, just called Plotly, we call it just Plotly, is a little better. It's better than Matplotlib because it is a little on its own. It's more interactive. You get when we run it, and I have Plotly examples here that you can just run. You run it from a Py file. You create a Python file, and you execute the file, and it creates the Plotly chart, which is an HTML file. Okay, that's a huge improvement over just being a static image file. It's an HTML file. However, all the instructions for the file and the data are still baked in to the HTML. It's still static in a way. However, they give you an interesting menu of little things that you can do at the top, which is a big improvement. And Plotly's made from some really interesting tools. Plotly is made from D3, which is this incredible JavaScript library for visualization. Been around for a while, and it's basically has allowed the explosion of visualization products on the web. It was all because of D3. And that came out in 2011, and it's been worked on ever since. And WebGL. WebGL is very fast. It uses a GPU if you can instead of a CPU. So it makes the polygraph good, really fast, and it's also capable of generating 3D images, which normal D3 and things based on D3 cannot do. Okay, so Plotly is an improvement, but it's still not interactive. Now, what I mean by interactive is how are you going to interact with everybody wants to interact with, you want to do things, producing different changes in the graph. How does it respond? How does when your data changes? How is, based on user interaction, you're going to get differences, which is going to cause, in the web world, it's going to cause refreshes of the page, and you'll get a new page, and that's called interactive. Actually, it's called reactive. The word reactive means that your application responds to any user input, and it's going to refresh the page, and your output is going to change. That's all really reactive means. But you want your application reactive. Okay? So that's where Dash comes in. Dash is not an image file. It's not an HTML file. It's in a web application. So when you're starting it still the same way. It's from a one Pi file. It's always going to be one file. That's one of the great things about it. It's not a complicated web application. It comes from one file. Okay? Everything is in one file, which is great. And you just execute this Pi file, and you get a web application. Okay? You can only see it in your browser. Okay, so a web application means you have a server running in the background, besides having a client serving data to a client HTML page. And that's what it's doing. And that's why that's what you have to have in order to have something be really interactive, reactive. Okay? So, the way Dash Plotly's done this is they combine, now other people are doing this. There are other products. One's called Bokeh. Anybody ever heard of Bokeh? Okay. I've looked at Bokeh. I didn't find it very intuitive, and there are not that many examples of it, but it was around before Dash was around, and it's still around. And panel.tybase is very interesting. That's coming out now, and that's it has very, very good possibilities. And then there's something called Altair. Altair is very interesting. Altair is in fact, Altair might be the easiest way to get visualizations from in the Python world. It's completely declarative. There's no programming. There's real programming involved. Everybody here does, it's an interesting term. Does anybody know the difference between, there's two types of programming, declarative and imperative? Do you know the difference?
No, go ahead.
What?
No, I'm saying no, you might as well explain.
I'll tell you. It's a very interesting analogy to explain what declarative and imperative is. It used to be that everything in the programming world, in the old days, was imperative. You had to write out instructions for everything that you want the computer to do. Do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. That's what programs were, okay? Well, over time, things became, well, you don't have to tell the computer what to do all the time. It knows what to do. You write functions, and then you write deeper functions, and then you write higher level functions, and everything becomes buried in functions, and you just give a top level command. So it became more declarative, so the way to think about it is, declarative is saying, just tell the ultimate way of being declarative is saying, tell the computer what you want from it, and it will go figure out what to do. The imperative model is, no, the computer has to be told how to do everything. Okay, so the analogy is this: you go into a restaurant and you go, I like this. You point to a menu and you go, I want that. That's all you say. That is totally declarative. But behind the scenes, of course, you have all these people, like the waiter, waitresses, reports it back to a chef, and the chef is basically your assembler. He knows what that means. He knows what your language means. He goes down and actually does the manual work, right? And then it comes back to you. So from the moment you say, I want this, everything disappears, and then it comes back. Okay? That's declarative. Rather than you saying, I want this, I want to prepare it this way, this way, this way, and please, only 3 ounces of this. You don't say that. People look at you if you're nuts, right? So it's a completely declarative model. So, but the danger of being declarative is everything becomes like a black box. You don't know what's going on. And now, in a lot of cases, that's okay. You don't have to know what's going on. Like in machine learning, we would say that, I would say that Keras is pretty declarative. You're telling it what you want. You know, you're saying, well, I want so many layers and so many batches to run, and, you know, things like that. But after that, Keras says, okay, I know what you want, and it comes back and it delivers. right? Rather than when we, over the summer, we took this course with Adam, and he did the manual way. It was so everybody could learn how the manual way was of creating a machine learning product. And that was using NumPy, basically, for everything. And you can do it with NumPy. And it's painful. And it's imperative. But you can do it that way. You'd rather have Paris do it in like 6 to 7 lines of code. It takes care of everything. Right? So that's declarative. Okay. So that Altair is a very declarative way. I recommend people looking at it. Uh-oh. Okay. I recommend just go to altair.org or something like that. It's a different model. It's a different way of doing things. It doesn't use any, like Python. It doesn't use any JavaScript. It doesn't use any language. It's just, you feed it. Oh yeah, well, yeah, you're going to have to feed it data. That's where you probably have to use like Python and pandas. But other than that, you don't see any language. And it does things, it's very good. Okay, but back to Dash. Dash says, the whole idea with Dash is, and that's why it's really kind of ingenious, and then it took, under the hood, you are running a JavaScript framework, it's called React, which connects with Flask. Does everybody know what Flask is?
Sure.
Yeah, Flask is they call it a microserver in the Python world, but it's very, very, very extendable. It's very flexible and extendable. It's used for lots of things, but it is the server part. But Flask sits on the border of the JavaScript world and the Python world because it can connect to anything in Python, and it allows for JavaScript templates to access it. So, but normally, you can do this on your own. People have been doing it on their own, creating Flask environments to run whatever they want in the Python world, like machine learning stuff, and connect to it from the JavaScript world, through endpoints. But it's two different things running on your server, and it becomes a lot more complicated to do that and to deploy it to some place like AWS, where you have two different things that have to run. And one has to call the other, and it's much more involved, it's more difficult, it takes a lot more time. And for companies, they want their data scientists to be able to produce their own stuff so people can see it on the web. Now here's the important point, without their data scientists having to become full-time front-end programmers. Okay? That's the whole thing. Make something that's easy, people can know how to do, get their visualizations out there on the web that everybody can see, and still let them do their job. Okay, so that's what Dash is trying to answer. Okay. So you have all this from the files I put out. These are all links to stuff. Getting started with Dash is very good. There's a tutorial in there from the company, from Plotly Dash, which is very good. I recommend everybody go through like at least the first 3-4 steps. There's only around 6, but go through the first 4, and it'll reinforce what I said. Okay, some of the examples I think I used to. Then they go to the Dash Gallery. You got to see this. Dash Gallery is examples. Come on now. So.
I'm sorry, where did you post this link?
Pardon me?
This Google Docs link. Where did you post it? It's good.
That page?
Yeah.
Oh, I have it out. It's on the Meetup site. I put it out today.
Somewhere I made it.
This is presentation.
And it's on the library webpage. Tell you what,
The library?
go to, is it on tonight's thing? It's definitely on last week's.
Yeah, but it
Go
is
to the library actually.
Right, go to the library and go to our class on the library and you'll see the link. Okay, now, this is the Dash Gallery. And this is a lot more than, Dash has been out since 2017. And they have been adding a lot more stuff. And it's all really interesting, and you can see the dashboards, the real dashboards, like up here, like the ones that have like different graphs going on. However, I want you to take, I assume I just clicked on the machine learning tag, and now I'll just bring up the ones that are involved with machine learning. So this is really the holy grail, I believe, of what companies want. If you can do this, like this one, the live model training, and there's another model over here, the support vector machine, okay, and then you have object detection. You should look at those examples, okay? You can go to them and you can download their source. That takes you right to GitHub, where the source for all these things are, okay? Now those are complicated, but you think about what they're doing. They're actually, Dash allows you to connect from the front end, one page, connect into this world where you can live train a model. That is the holy grail of all this. Okay? It's complicated. We're not going to get to that part, but hopefully by the end of this 4 sessions, you'll have enough you'll know what's going on with Dash, that you understand the Dash part really well. Of course, Dash connects with Flask, and of course, it's in the Flask world that you're running all the machine learning parts. Okay, that's not Dash, but Dash can connect all that. Okay? Now, so I recommend all these things. These are all links. Exploring the capabilities of Plotly is a really good article. It's a Medium article. There's a Towards Data Science article by this guy who I read a lot. He's really good. He just shows you some stuff what he's done with Plotly. And then the Good First Project in Dash also came out this year. That was also in Medium or Towards Data Science. All really, really useful, all good. So as I said last week, that one of the sticking points, I mean, you'll become a lot better and a lot more comfortable using Dash if you get comfortable using Plotly. Because Plotly is the graphic library that uses. So Dash itself just uses 3 things under the hood: React, Flask, and the Plotly graphing library. Okay? So you bring your data in, we bring our data in, we use standard Python tools, we're going to use pandas to bring any data set in, and then we got to this is part that you'll only learn how to do with experience. You learn how to wrangle the data to get it into to get your data set into basically your X's and Y's that Plotly wants to see. Okay, so that's going to be done. You'd have to do that with almost any plotting library. But it's just one of the, I would say one of the early pain points of doing this stuff. That you might think it's hard, but it gets a lot easier. Okay. So let me just review this and all the visualizing. There's an article here. The article, the reference thing I point to is visualizing earthquakes. That is what inspired me to really say, "Wow, this is really neat," and that's what made me learn Dash. And it's written by this guy who's really neat. He called himself Jack. He's Giacomo Devedia, and this is on his site, and it links to his GitHub site too. How he did it, and it was really basically his first project in Dash. That's really very interesting. And he writes, that's an article about how he thought about it, and how he learned how to do it. All right, I wanted to show this again. I showed this last week. This is when you think about this one-page program, it's really quite conceptually simple. It's much, much simpler than anything that we had to learn out in machine learning. It's because we're going to do all the imports. We bring in pandas, we bring in Plotly, and boom. The next thing is we read in step 2 should be step 1 there. Step 1 is like you're starting the app with that dash line, okay? That, if anybody's familiar with Flask, that's the very same command you see in Flask when you start a Flask server. So basically that's what it's doing. It's starting the Flask server when you come right here. However, you want your DF, you want your data frame as most of the time being global, as a global variable, which I would put it above the where you start dash, because it just makes more sense to have your data come in, it's all global, and then you can start your dash out. Okay? Now, step 4. Okay, step 4 and step 3 are really combined. Step 4, you only have 2 things. 2 things that Dash wants you to do. And that's that Dash, you're going to be creating like the page from components. There's only two component libraries. One's called the Dash core components, one's called the Dash HTML components. Okay? So Dash HTML components is exactly what it means. All it is a wrapper, it's a Python wrapper for HTML elements, like divs, like H's, like P's, stuff like that. You have to use the Dash HTML components just to have them. But you have them, so they're just HTML. Okay, allows you to do anything with HTML. The core components are like more higher level components, but they're still things that everybody's used to using, like drop downs, radio buttons, sliders, things like that. Okay, and there's a library in the doc. I'll point it to in the Dash documents. You can see that it's all really well documented. All the components that you have at your access in the Dash core components, and then they built like more sophisticated components one's called the graph component, which we use all the time because that accepts the Plotly graph. You put your Plotly graph in there, and that's what knows how to work with Plotly. Okay? And then they recently came out with something called their HTML table component, which is really, really, really neat. We're going to get to that next week, because what that allows you to do to be interactive is you can go to a table of data, just click on whatever line you want, and you can see that, you can see whatever you want to see. Let's say it's on a map, data on a map. You'll just see those things that you selected in the table come up on the map. That type of thing, okay? But that's all part of the core components. Now, the last thing is add callback functions. Not the last thing, but this is step number 6 you have to have for everything, because that's a Flask command saying run. But number 5 is add the callback functions. Okay. Callbacks. Anybody know what a callback in the world, in whatever programming environment you are in is?
It's like a function.
What?
Function. You pass parameters.
Yes, but it's a certain, of course, but it's a certain type of function.
Input.
Okay, so I don't want anybody to get like lost here in what a callback is, but in the JavaScript world, callbacks are everything. Okay, it's the JavaScript environment runs all with callbacks because callbacks allow it to call things asynchronously, and because Java is a single-threaded environment, you have to call things asynchronously. Otherwise, it would take forever for a program to run. Okay. However, and I think that's where they're using this word. It's become used here as whenever you call back to the server, you're basically making a JavaScript asynchronous call back to the server to get data. Okay, that's why they call it callbacks here. Okay, the concept is similar. In Python, in the Python world, I think you're right. You can have a parameter to a function, a parameter that a function uses as a function. The parameter itself is a function that you're going into when you run a function, and when the function runs, it keeps going back and calling that parameter, which is a function, and that in the Python world is normally called a callback. It's a little different concept they're running than asynchronous functions, which they are in JavaScript. And here it really means an asynchronous function, but don't worry about all that. You don't have to know anything about that. Okay, but tonight, but this number 5 is the connective glue that allows interaction. It all comes from callbacks. Okay? This is how we're going to make our application interactive. This is how we're going to allow it to do things that the program responds to. This is how that one chart is going to interact with another chart. It's all through callbacks. And the basic idea about callbacks is really simple. And that's what we're going to do tonight. Because once we have that, and I'm just going to take, I prepared three examples that gradually getting more complex. That I think once you have them, you'll really know what callbacks do. And then we're ready for next week. Next week we're going to start doing real dashboards, like multiple graphs that talk to one another. Okay? But it's all through callbacks that you can do that. Okay. Can you go to can we go to the source files that we have? And there's a folder called dash callbacks. Oh, by the way, so I have three folders here. One's called Basic Dash, one's called Plotly Examples, and one's called, Callbacks, right? Dash Callbacks. So we went over, last week we did a number of from the Basic Dash. I recommend you going through them, okay? They're basics, it's real basic stuff. There's really no interaction, but they'll just run. So it's a very quick, it shows you how quick it is to get your data out there, at least, on some type of visualization going. Then I have the Plotly. I have a number of examples of Plotly. Plotly itself, I think I'd like to go over one of them a little later because it introduces a very interesting way of going through your data. If people are okay with their Python, is everybody familiar with what's called list comprehensions? List comprehensions? Okay, so a lot of times you have to iterate through data. Iterate through like a table that you bring in of data, and the standard way for doing that is with a for loop that you're going to iterate through everything. With a list comprehension, does the same thing. It's really a very interesting Pythonic concept. It does the same thing that a for loop does, but it takes this amount of code, whereas a for loop would take that amount of code. Okay, and I believe that list comprehensions are faster in the Python code. In your performance-wise, list comprehensions are faster than for loops. So it's always good to use them when you can. And I have a number of examples we'll go see tonight, and then there's a really good one in the Plotly, in one of the Plotly diagrams. Okay, can we go to? Can people pull up under callbacks? Can we do the very first? Can we do basic? Oh, can we do basic no callback? Can we run that? What? Oh, you have to download them. Okay, into an EMV that we created last week. And and to run it in Python, when you're in your folder, you have your folder come up that has all these, okay, in your ENV. So the command to run is Python, say the word Python, and then the name of the file. So it's Python basic no callbacks.py, basic dash no callback.py. I'm sorry, I can't run it from that machine, so I'll have to reverse something.
So where is your?
Right. Okay. Okay, so you're going to have to go to dashboard. Dashboard. Because that's you got to look. I don't. You have to get your down. Or else you can just move it to some other tab. Okay. Is everybody able to do this? Would you run it? Let me see. Yes, that's what you want to see.
Yeah.
So
I know.
on your browser, you want to go to 850. Okay.
This is the.
Okay. So this is really okay. So it's really just putting up. It's really just showing a text box. That's all we're doing. Okay. Now try to go in there. Can you just change the text box?
Yeah.
Just put something else in. I mean, you can.
There's no color.
Yeah, but it's not a callback. You just put, it's just, we're not using callbacks here, okay? We're just saying, okay, we created an HTML text box, and it basically doesn't do anything, but you can enter stuff, right? Okay, now go. Did everybody take a look at that code for that? You see what it's doing?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh,
All the code is just sets up. Well, the code is setting it up with the HTML component and then with the DCC component, right? The DCC component is the text box. You see that? Yeah, it's right here. Okay. All right. So and then we have. Okay. So you can see the function at the bottom, the def update output div. That's a function. That's what we want to do. We want to be able to write stuff in, and it's going to write it out somewhere. So we want to write it out to this div that's underneath the text box. I have that div there, right? Okay. But it can't do that because it can't connect to that function.
And you set the size of the box.
there's probably documentation.
The size of the box?
Yeah.
Well, right now, the way I have it, I didn't give it, you can put in CSS there, and I do have CSS. I do have CSS for you for the next one when we run it, okay? But for right now, don't worry about it, okay? That gets us.
Does it get you like external templates that you can use?
Yes. Yes, in fact, we'll get to that.
Okay.
Maybe not tonight, but a guy wrote a full external CSS template for this. Yes. Okay, now, let's open up, let's now run basic callback. Basic callback 1.
But that's not the one.
Under dash callback, I think you're in the other folder. That's it. Yes. Yes. That's the first one. That's basic no callback, right? Okay, now run this one. You're in the wrong folder. You're in the wrong folder.
That's the old one. This one, now the text box, and it's
Oh, you have to close that. Close that out. Close that. Okay, and now go here. Now go down here. You want to run Control C.
Oh, well, I
Yeah.
just realized what I did, and then Visual Studio, this is a basic, Visual Studio.
Okay, so you were running something like you last week.
Visual Studio, yeah, this is just a,
Yeah.
HTML editor, programming environment, just the basic things.
Then maybe it was
And
everywhere
I,
now.
a lot, so I just,
80/50. So you have, that's right. I just do Control-C on my computer.
But
It's fine.
I don't know what other people are using in my computer.
Is it working?
Yeah, we're just discussing.
She's getting it on her Mac.
I'm using Visual Studio Code, but I don't know what other people are using.
I always use VC, Visual Studio Code. Is that what you're using?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I always use.
We don't know what did people install last week to like work with.
Well, people working on this are using a sprite editor from Anaconda, which I do never use. I don't. Okay.
So I downloaded the files.
Okay. Now
On my
you can add anything you want. Try it. Anything you want. But this is one I like. This one I like. Right.
It's just like there are lots of different. I guess they're saying they're using sprite editor or whatever, but yeah, digital. Yeah.
Okay. Control C. C. Control C should. Okay. Okay.
And then now I have the next one.
Go ahead and go on. Yeah. Just put in. Hold on one. Okay, so this is a really, really, really simple demonstration of what a callback is doing. Okay, so
What's the U run?
I can't, it works. It all works. But I can't run it because I don't have the environment to run it on that. But take a look at this is the essence of callbacks. Take a look at the app callback. Okay? So when you have that @ sign in front of the app, does anybody know what that means in Python? It means something very specific. Okay, that means it's a decorator function. Anybody heard of decorator functions? Okay, so a decorator, anybody want to hazard a meaning of decorator functions, what they do? Anybody? Okay, so a decorator function is a very interesting concept. Python, I guess another language too. So it said a decorator function is always attached to at least one function, which is this, the def update output div. Okay, it's going to run that function. However, it's going to run that without, so that function you never touch, modify that function. So that could be used in many other places. However, it's going to add things to it. A decorator adds things for very specific, for a specific type of cases to what you're going to do with that function. So that function can be used for different purposes. The decorator is just going to change what it wants to happen. Okay, so it's very dynamic.
So in this case here, what is doing the decorating that callback? What is it doing to the...
Okay, I'm going to explain it. Okay, so this is the decorator. The decorator, first of all, needs IDs. It always needs an ID to communicate with what your function is going to communicate to. Okay? So we're going to run this. The callback is going to run this function. Okay? On the output, you always have an output and an input, and you can have multiple. We'll get there, but you can have multiple outputs and multiple inputs. But the only way it knows is by the ID. You see the ID up there for my ID, for the input, and my div for the div? Okay, so that's how it knows that the output is always first, and the output is what it's going to be sending back, which is to my div. It's going to be sending something back to my div. And the input is going to be coming in from my ID, which is the text box, the input text box up there. And you don't have to say this is just for writing it out so you know what it's doing. People don't use component properties really. You don't need that. It's kind of too verbose. You just have to put in what the value is that it's going to be bringing in or putting out. So it's very simple for the one that's bringing it in. From the input, we call value equals initial value. Okay? It's always going to take in what is called a value. And for the output is a children property. Now, the first children property of a div is actually what the div contains. So if the div just contains text, that's your children property. If there's only one property, like there is here, you can use it this way. If there's multiple properties, you have to be more specific. Okay? So all the callback is doing is supplying, and then the callback runs the function. It runs that def right there. Okay? Now, one really important thing here, which it's easy to be confused by, so I want to go over this. See what I call the input? Okay, so this is like any function. Like the parameter that's coming in, I'm calling the input. Okay? It can be anything, but it's the input coming in, which means whenever we want to use that, we have to call it the input here for that. Okay? Because that's within the function, the parameter, and how it's being used within the function itself. However, what's being passed from the outputs and the inputs in the callback is just like a calling statement from any other function, calling something else. The names don't matter. It's really important to know this, because it's confusing when you first look at that. You can call these things anything you want. It knows from your input, it knows that, it knows where it's coming from. Okay? It knows. Okay, so the only thing that this can bring in, the way it is right there, is an input parameter. That's an input parameter. It's accepting it from the outside. Okay, it's accepting it from right here, the input. The input there knows. It's calling this function with that value. That's what the callback, that's what's written behind you. It knows to do that.
How does it know?
Okay, so that's the way Dash has set it up. That whatever is in, now you can have multiple inputs, but multiple input statements, and we'll get to that in there. So the only way it knows
There are more than one depth.
is by order. It's not by name. It knows that it's going to send all those as parameters to functions. Okay? But it's not by name.
So if you have more than one depth.
Pardon me?
If you have more than one depth.
Yeah, you can. You can have a lot of depths. All right, yes, we'll get there. There's something else you got to put in there, just for identification. But it knows that it's sending that input. It knows it's sending it out to defs. It knows that.
So the input here, the MOMA ID, which is the info, how is the def, the underscore input is tied to the input? That's how the dash works?
It's just a variable.
What? The input?
Yeah, there is a variable declared the underscore input.
Okay. This is what I'm saying. Yeah, I know it's really confusing. It confused me when I first saw this. This can be anything. It doesn't have to. It's not going to. It doesn't have to match whatever we're bringing in from up there, because this component in the callback, this is the way it's written for us by Dash, knows that whatever in the input, it's going to be passing it out to the calling function. The function is calling. It knows that. Okay. So when you pass out multiple inputs, it's just by order. But that corresponds to the way that we always think about functions. We don't care about the names on the parameters, right? You can call a parameter one thing here, but a function here will be completely different. Names don't matter, right? So it's the same thing going on. It knows that. It knows that it's passing it through.
So app callback, is that, thinking of JavaScript, what event is this attached to? Is this gonna happen all the time or any?
No, good, very good question. It happens, remember, this is, we say reactive.
Mhm.
Whenever there's a change
Change to the
in
input.
value or the children, whenever there's a change, no, not the children is the output. Whenever there's a change in the input, okay?
So you can switch up that event when you want.
Well, that's the way it's built in. Whenever there's a change, the event's gonna fire.
But if I didn't want it to fire on an input change, maybe I wanted to let somebody enter
I mean,
more.
there's ways to do
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
There's ways to do that. However, the way this is set up
Yeah.
is that it's to be completely reactive. The event is going to fire on a change in, what is it here, that value, and then it's going to call that function whenever there's a change.
What function? Which one?
What?
Okay, walk me through it.
Yeah.
You've got a screen just sitting.
Go to your screen, run this.
I can't.
You
I can in 15 minutes by the time I figure out all the directory structure and everything else.
But you'll see it work. Okay.
Well, all right, but just stay with,
Okay.
you've got a screen.
Right.
And it's got a radio button or something
Yeah.
that you change.
Right.
Okay, so that enters into this Python code. On the input side.
From your input box, remember we
Right.
have an input text.
Mhm.
That is, when you put that in,
Yeah.
that value is coming right down here.
You went to his.
The value is being picked up, sorry. That value is what you enter, okay?
Okay.
Got with me?
Yep.
Okay. That value then, the input in the callback, the input component is looking, that component property is looking right at that value.
Right.
If that value changes,
Mhm.
it's going to call this function.
Which function?
Def update output div.
Okay.
It doesn't
goes
call it
off
until
and
it
does something.
doesn't call it until it changes.
Right, but then it goes off and does something.
And then def output div, update output div runs,
Mhm.
and look at it, what's it doing?
It's doing something, it's doing
Well,
what you
no,
want
look
it
at the code, what do you think it does?
to. Oh, it's printing out on the screen, it's echoing back what you
It's
put in.
going to print out, you've entered whatever you entered.
Right.
That's what's going to print out in that div, that
Mhm.
HTML div,
Okay.
okay?
Mhm.
It
So
works.
we're able to do it, yeah, so it's
Yeah.
every key stroke.
Okay, there's a way to stop that, but now it picks up every keystroke when it changes. There's a way to stop that. We'll get that.
See it.
But it works, it's working.
That's the input field.
Uh-huh.
Callback.
Yes,
That is.
what's the name of the program?
And
Yes.
so anytime you go in there, the video say,
How can it work for him?
that's.
I rebooted.
Yeah, I was just trying
Yeah,
to.
yeah, like it's hard to visualize.
Do you remember that command that Kasha
Yeah,
showed?
thank you.
Did that work? I forget what it was. Remember he showed that if it doesn't, you get hung up? Yeah, you get wiped, it just wipes it. At the end of that.
Doing a callback, which.
Okay, so this is really basic, but this shows you what callbacks do. Are we okay? Are we okay with this?
When it runs,
Okay,
somebody does something.
now let's jump into the next one.
Literally goes back to the server API that is serving whatever. So it's doing stuff. And it's doing it in Python. It's very easy. It's pulls user input from a terminal or from a keyboard.
Okay. Okay, can we run Gapminder by year? And this is a lot more involved, but this is a real thing. Can I look over your shoulder? Gapminder by year. Here you go. And that's you. Yes. So here's the drop down. And if you click on years, you should be able to see there's change. Okay. Yeah. So this is kind of a mimic of a very famous visualization from the Gapminder. What everybody thinks of the Gapminder visualization. It was what was his name? Hans Roll. What was his name?
Bronson?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
He died, right?
Yeah. So he did this on at a TED Talk,
Yeah.
2007.
We just do
Yeah.
a video.
Yeah. And it was very, very famous. And then people have come along in any visualization package and they always show the Gapminder. Oh, yeah. In fact, the very famous one right after when Mike Bostock was the creator of D3. He created D3 in 2011 and in 2012 he released his Gapminder. So everybody can see how beautiful D3 did Gapminder. And but the real Gapminder is animated for 130 years.
Wow.
It spins through the years.
That's what you use?
It spins through the years and it shows all these bubbles, how they are for the countries, how they are moving, life expectancy versus GDP. Okay. So does everybody have it up? So you see, does everybody see the drop down at the bottom of the graph?
Yeah.
Okay, if you go to the arrow on the right, you can pick a year. I think they're in 5-year intervals. Okay, and then you can see, you see that the graph refreshes and there's movement. There's movement on the graph. Okay?
So all the data is single file, all the data.
Yes. Yes. It's all from a single file. In fact, being what you want to do when constructing this is that you never want to have calls back to the data, back to the source of the data from your callbacks. In the callbacks are just going to be filtering data from the data that's already there in the DF. So you're just writing filters on the DFs. Okay, the data is already in the
So
application.
you catch the data.
Because that becomes, with a lot of data, that becomes very expensive to keep going back all the time. You don't do that. The data is already in there. You just keep filtering and filtering and filtering it to get what you want. Okay, so let's go to the code. The code's a little complicated. Remember we got you working last week? Oh, yeah. Okay. I can't do it right now, but I want to get through this. But I remember you had work last week. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, now? Oh. Okay. Okay, bear with me here. Let's go through this. Okay? It's a lot more complicated, but conceptually, it's the same thing. Why this is a lot more complicated is because we're bringing in data. We have to work with the data in order to, in the callback, and then to create the graph in the callback, to plot the graph, and send it to this graph component. Okay, so we bring in our stuff, all up there. We bring in Plotly, we bring in pandas, we read in the data file. I have a print DF there, so you can actually see your data. You can actually see your columns. I always like to do that. You can actually see your columns. If you go back to the terminal, you will see that. You'll see like what pandas will provide a snapshot of the data. Not all the lines because there are too many, but some of them. Oh yes, you did. If you didn't get an error, you did. You didn't get an error. Does anybody, if they go back to the column, you see the data?
I do.
Yes, she does. I don't.
I had to scroll up a lot.
Okay, maybe you should scroll up down higher, but you should just see. In fact, it's going to be at the very beginning.
Yes.
Okay, okay. So that's your data, those are your columns. Okay. Now. Okay. Ready? Here we go. We got our data coming in. Now first we're going to construct the values for the drop down. Okay, and then we can put them into the drop. What are we doing with the drop down? I have that in a right here, and a for loop right here. Okay, year options is an array, and the array I'm going to put in right here. Okay, it's a drop-down component. It's a core component. The DCC is a core component, dashboard component for just being a standard drop-down. We want to put in this the ID and the options. The options is this array, year options. Okay, so take a look at that for loop. For a year in DF year unique, okay, that is going to grab just a list. The data frame is just going to be a list. Well, the DF unique, year unique is just going to bring in all the years. Okay, where you have the year, you have a line for each year for each country. Right, so that's just going to get the years. Okay, so we have a data for, then we're just going to get the year in that, and then the year options, which that's of course that list. We're appending, see what we're doing? We're appending a label, which is the string of the year, because that's what we're going to see on the left-hand side. That, you know, just think of a drop-down. You have the what it is, the descriptive, and then you have the value. That's what we're doing right here. We're bringing back this object. That's an object which in Python, that's called a dictionary. Okay, the label is the year, and the value is the numerical year. Okay? Okay, so right here, we just stick that in here. We're sticking that dictionary right in there for options, so it knows what it's doing. And right here, value right there is DF year min. That's going to be the initial value. We're going to start out with the lowest year.
We didn't sort this at any point though, right? We're just,
Pardon me?
we didn't sort the data frame by
Nope.
year.
Nope.
So
Nope, you didn't, it's not sorted. You don't have to.
you don't have to, it'll automatically sort.
It's going to, I don't sort it anywhere. I don't sort it. I think it sorts itself.
It knows.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're down here. Right? We're at the callback. The callback, the input is, the ID here is year picker. The year picker, that's the input from the dropdown. We're getting that year. It's right here, value. And the value is what's right there. The first time it runs through, it's going to be the initial value. The output, okay, now the output, you just go to graph. Graph is the ID for this graph. That's the component graph, okay? The graph, you can think of it, the graph object accepts the plotly figure. Plotly calls their charts figures, okay? And that's what we're passing back. You don't have to say it. It's passing back a figure. That's what plotly is. That's what the graph component expects. Okay, we'll get into what that figure is. The figure, well, I'll tell you right now. The figure is composed of two things in Plotly. Data, there's two parts, and layout. So you have a data part saying, what's my data, and things about data. And the other thing is layout. It's just completely declarative. It's just saying, what's the title, what's the x-axis, the label for the x-axis, what's the label for the y-axis, stuff like that. Okay? The layout is how it looks. All right, now, here comes just a little, code that's a little more complicated than we've seen before. So, we have the year, and it's being passed in as selected year to this function. Okay, we're going to filter the year. Remember, that is the data frame for all the unique years. We're going to say we have that. And what we're saying, where the year is the selected year, which is the year we're passing in from the dropdown. Okay? So that's the first filter. We're just taking that one year. Okay? And then we make a new frame, data frame, which is another filter. We're going to filter on the continent. We're going to filter by the continent name. By the continent names. Okay? So we have that filtered by year, and then we're creating another filter saying just we're going to select we're going to select where that continent name is. Okay, that continent name, you'll see where that comes from. But this is just another filter. Okay. Now, this is, traces is a list, and it's a list of, this is a Plotly thing, it just always uses this word traces, but all it is a list of going to collect all of the data, you can think of the data sets for each year going on here, okay? So when that year goes through, it's going to march through each year in the for loop. For each year, it's going to acquire a set of data, right, for your X and Y axis. But then it's going to go to the next year and acquire, another set. So each of those sets of data are going to be put into a Python list called traces, and down here we just say data is traces. That's the way Plotly wants to handle it. And it is a list because if it was just one thing and we're just doing one data set, you wouldn't need traces at all. Because there's multiple data sets here for each. Okay, now here we just define what we're doing. We say the X is that all the values coming from the GDP per capita. Okay, that's your X-axis for that year and for that continent. And this is coming from the life expectancy column for that year and for that continent. Okay? And the text, that's something that comes up when you hover. Plotly just gives you that. When you hover, you don't have to say hover when you're going through functions for doing hovering. When you hover over one of the bubbles, it's going to give you the text, which is going to be a name of the country, which is the bubble. Okay? And then this is stuff that the markers, the bubbles, the opacity, opacity value between 0 and 1 for the, for the transparency of the bubble. The marker size, these are all things that you can put in what you want. And the name, though, is the continent name. That is for, this is also something else that Plotly gives you when you have multiple traces. When you have multiple data sets in the traces, Plotly knows that you want a legend. It's going to give you a legend. Okay? And the legend is going to be by continents. That's the continent name is going to be the markers, the values on the legend. Now, it might seem a little like, this just takes a little getting used to. Well, I got to tell you, I'm a JavaScript programmer. I love D3. I think it's wonderful. Okay, but to accomplish all this, using the same data set, doing the same stuff in D3, it would take you a whole day. No, I'm sorry. If you're really used to doing something like this, it would take you half a day. You have to create, okay. And then you would get, I'm not creating my own legend by myself. I'm going to bring in a library for that. But to do all that? Okay, scatter plots are kind of easy. Okay, maybe not a whole morning. but a lot of time. Look how easy this is. Okay, and down here, you have the return statement of you have to put in the figure, what goes in a figure, that's what's returning, is the data and the layout. Just in the layout is your title, your y-axis, and your hover mode. That's a standard hover mode, and that's it. Any questions? A what?
How can you get a different when here it's always like 1 to 7 0 0.
It's local host,
Yeah.
8050. So it's just standard to run dash said I'm going to run, like underneath the hood said we're just going to always run on port 8050.
I can't change that. Is there
Why would you want to change that?
if I run different, I want to show people.
Oh, different ones having up at the same
yeah,
time?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sure you can. Just go in, in fact, I will check the documentation for you. I'm sure there's gotta be a way of people wanting to show multiple things running.
And also, is there any way, like, just like E3, we show, like, other people can also like, access it?
Okay, so we haven't gotten to deployment yet.
Oh,
I say there's a whole chapter and there's a whole thing in the tutorial about deployment. It's a really easy deployment. They deploy that in the deployment. In their docs, they highly recommend deploying to Heroku. Okay, and then it becomes, and all these people out there, the one that I've shown you for the earthquakes, you definitely should go look at that. It's deployed to Heroku. Well, everybody's deploying their Dash apps to Heroku because it's free and it works, fine.
Yeah, you asked us to run under that terminal, right? But if like you install in like Spider or something, you just run here.
You're using Spider, right?
Yeah, so can we, or, I don't see anything here, or,
I don't know if you can. I don't know Spider that
so you
well.
always run.
I
under
always run from the command
internet.
line.
Okay.
I always run from it.
Gotcha.
Okay, because I think you have to, because remember when there's things that come up, you can say that the server shows you, like what's in the data table.
Yeah.
That's from the server. That shows up in the command line, right? That's not showing up in HTML. Yes.
The logarithmic scale, right? We didn't configure it at all, so it came out of Dash, right?
The scale.
Yeah, I mean
Yes. You can. Okay, so the scale itself, Plotly's figuring out for you.
Okay.
Okay, like in D3, you have to search for your mins and maxes of all the ranges, and it's going to scale that way. Plotly does that for you right away. You don't have to mess with that. However, you can under if you look for this.
This is type
Yeah, I'm sure there is some way config, yes. But by default, it kind of does it for you.
Yeah, and right here under that graph, you could put in CSS for how wide. You can go the CSS for width or height. You can control the width and height of the actual graph itself from CSS, right, which would be right there. Yes, but I think it's beautiful that for you don't have to figure out your axes or your ranges. Plotly's doing that for you. Okay, and if you work with D3, you'd have to do that all yourself.
So syntax gap. Where dy by continent or dy by trigger? We have a
Right here.
yeah. In explain the syntax that we have TF the data frame.
Yeah.
Then you are filtering again with DF here. The two TFs there.
Yes.
One is the parameter index.
Okay, so this is a standard way of this is your main DF, okay?
Yeah.
That's your DF with all the data. Okay. So this is a standard way of doing filtering. You are selecting on the column that you want. So all you're saying here is the DF, whenever you have a column within quotes here, and by bars, that's a column that you're selecting, the name. You're saying, I want this column name, which is year, okay, equal to something. It's a filter. But that's a standard pandas technique of doing that. It's a DF within the DF
Oh,
for filter. Yes. Yes.
So you had two controls or two?
Okay, I'm glad you said this. This one? Okay, if you go to the live running, okay, click on the continents on the legend, and you'll see all the other ones disappear.
Yeah.
Okay? That's what that's doing. And you don't even have to code that.
Amazing.
It knows that's what you want. Isn't that amazing? So So that's what, as I say, that becomes making it much more and more declarative. We're used to imperative thinking. I want you to do this, 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 this.
That's what you use.
It says, you know, Plotly's saying, I know what you want. Let me take care of it.
So if we did, you know, instead of here, we wanted, like, say, population in some segment as another drop down.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in that one callback, like, inputs
No.
like the year and.
No, my next example, what time is it? I don't know if we have time.
8 o'clock.
Oh, I'm sorry. Will everybody please look at the next example, which is, I have two different drop downs. Oh yeah, callback inputs. Callback inputs, those are having multiple inputs. Those are multiple inputs from two different dropdowns. Anybody have it up? Okay, you see the two drop downs?
Yeah.
So it's cars, MPG, it's a standard like data table. It's used in a lot of these things. But you can filter, so it's really a repeat of all, each drop down basically has the same it's all the data columns in the table. But you can plot, this will plot any column versus any other column. Like number of cylinders versus horsepower, number of cylinders versus MPG, you know, all that stuff. Okay? So it's two different drop downs you're selecting from. There's two different inputs. Yes, how to do this all. Okay. Okay, so we're kind of done, but everybody should look at that that example, okay? It just goes, the one thing that I'm adding there is multiple inputs,
Yeah.
okay, instead of just one input. And it'll show how, and then you're going to have, well, you know, it can be either, I think for that it's still one function, but then when we get into like multiple graphs interconnecting with each other, we're going to have multiple functions taking in inputs from whatever place it gets it from and distributing out the outputs, which is going to be each graph. And that's what we're going to get to next week.
Do the outputs also then become an array, or, you know, like, just the input looks like it's an array, right? Input this, input that, comma, input that, it's an array.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. In the JavaScript world's an array. In the Python world's a list.
List, whatever,
Right.
list. I mean, do we get?
That's how Plotly wants it.
That's how, I noticed, even when we had one, we had it
Yeah,
in the,
Plotly wants it just as the list.
as a list. Do the outputs also become a list, or no? In this?
Oh, you're saying from the callback itself?
Yeah.
Right, you're right. No,
Okay.
only the inputs. The inputs are part of the list. The outputs are actually the outputs you just are comma separated. They're not part of the list.
Oh, okay, but we will see more than one figure or whatever?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, definitely. But it's, yeah, I wondered about that too. It's only the inputs that have to be, they have to be in the list. Did everybody feel they have a handle now on what callbacks do? Because callbacks are the thing that allow all this stuff to happen. Okay? So if we want to have interactive dashboards, it's all going to be done through this way, callbacks. Which is, I have to tell you, if you did have this way, you could have like, so you would build a Java, inside of a JavaScript framework, like React or Angular or Vue, you would have your central data source, okay? And then from that data source, you would call out, you could bring in polygraph into React or Vue or Angular, okay? They're meant to do that. So, but you would have to create all your data sources in the JavaScript framework, feed the plots, because, you know, Angular, React, or Vue is the reactive framework. Okay? Not, you got to think of it that way. Your controls are in that framework. They're not in something like this. All I'm saying is this is a lot faster to do it this way than to put your charts or plots inside of a JavaScript framework. That's the way that, you know, still a lot of the world does it. But I believe that you know, once these, there's been a lot of usage of this, of Dash, that because people can get their stuff out pretty quickly, and it doesn't take a lot of work.
Does Dash integrate with Tableau?
Okay, this gentleman right here is a Tableau man, Bill. He obviously Tableau has influenced lots and lots of things. People want dashboards. That's what Tableau. When people think of dashboards, they think of, a lot of people think of Tableau. They do dashboards really quickly, right? However, Tableau, this is just my observation, and from the little that I don't work with Tableau, but I wonder maybe I should, that Tableau is very much in the Microsoft world, okay? Tableau, I don't see mentioned at all in the Python world. Okay? That's it. So the people doing machine learning and wanting to do, you know, put their stuff out there, you know, what I showed you before on the gallery, this allows that way. The Python world doesn't use Tableau. I don't know why not.
Because there's no.
It's expensive.
There's no interface? But I mean, writing interfaces is like,
Well, you can integrate R and Python with Tableau.
what?
You
Yeah,
can
it's
integrate
the other
R
way
and
around.
Python with Tableau.
You can use Python with
No,
Tableau.
you can integrate. There's an
Right,
integrate.
right.
Connection is-
So you can, yeah, so I don't know why people aren't doing it, but they're not. The Python world's basically stayed away from Tableau.
Yeah, maybe license.
I don't know what you need to do though.
It's not
What?
open source.
I mean, it's like, it takes your data and it makes whatever visualization you
Yeah,
want
it doesn't
without
care.
programming.
It
So
doesn't care where it
I
comes
don't know
from.
what you need to do with Python.
You tell
Except the
me,
machine learning stuff.
okay. I look at a lot of articles and I don't see anybody using Tableau with Python.
No,
Maybe
I
I'd love
don't know what you need to
proprietary.
do with Python.
What?
Is it proprietary?
Yes, and it's
Yeah.
expensive.
Because maybe licensing.
No.
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute.
That's how
Well,
much-
you would know more, Bill, but you can run Tableau on your own computer
Mhm.
for free.
Only
You
2
want
weeks.
your
Oh,
2 weeks.
You can use it, they've got a tab, they have a
One
public
month.
Right.
Yeah, public.
cloud-based function. So
But
if
to
you
put it
load
out
your-
there,
You have to
but-
put your data
but
up
to
on
deploy
cloud.
it out there, then
Very
It runs
expensive,
into
very,
most
very
of those.
expensive.
it gets, right, maybe that's right. And in the open source world, people aren't into that.
Right.
That's maybe.
So
Yeah,
here's
yeah.
an example of why you might use Python. So I just did a clinical trial dashboard in Power BI, which is
Yeah, Power BI.
Yeah, Power BI. yeah.
and so yeah, it's kind of like I don't know what it's like, but it's like Excel.
So
supposedly,
what, but then,
anyway, I had to do a Kaplan-Meier plot. They didn't have any Kaplan-Meier plots in, you know, Power BI.
but Power, you're right, so people in the Microsoft world, I mean, obviously are steered that way, Power BI, right? But does Power BI create dashboards? It must.
It does, it's all dashboard. That's
It's all
what exactly what it
dashboard,
is. There's a
Tableau is
desktop
more powerful?
server. Yeah.
The Tableau is probably more rich.
Jazzy.
It's a richer environment.
Tableau is
Maybe.
mostly used for self-service. Self-service analytics.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
So
want to kind of
database.
analyze data, drag and drop,
Yeah.
Yes.
relevant data,
Yeah.
that's very good at that one.
No, I mean, Tableau is, I think it must be the licensing thing, the price
Yeah.
thing, that
It's expensive.
people in the open source world don't
Yeah.
go for.
Plus, you can do some real custom visualizations in Python that you can't touch in Tableau.
That's the reason to
No
insert.
customization.
So if you really, like you were talking
Yeah.
about a particular statistical distribution, that might not be in Tableau.
Right.
But you can do it yourself in Python.
Well, the question is, how does it run it?
Can you customize?
Well, it's the same thing with D3. When D3 is like, D3 is the best tool for animations. Nothing touches it. Okay. In fact, I don't know why, but a lot of these animations are getting better, but they're a little clunky. They're not that smooth, and they're sitting on top of D3. I don't know about animations in Tableau.
Well, some of the stuff that you showed with D3 of
Yeah.
the little ball chasing the other little
Right.
balls around and all of that, that's not
It doesn't
really
do that.
Tableau.
Right.
So the reason, so I mean, this, I don't know about Tableau, I've used it not really to that extent, but in Power BI, what happens with Python is you import a data set and you can slice and dice it and, you know,
Right.
pivot,
Right.
whatever
Right.
you want.
Yeah.
The first part of the Python code, you're using their code to import their data set, which has levers on it that you can slice and dice. So when you pull up that Kaplan-Meier thing and you hit the filters and stuff,
Right.
it reruns Python and it comes
Okay.
back as
Right.
something different.
Right.
So that's pretty interesting. I'm guessing Tableau probably does the same.
Yeah,
thing,
I'm
but,
sure.
you know,
Power BI, that's completely free, but
the desktop version is, and don't let it fool you. So
okay.
the dirty secret is, yeah, you can use any Python library you want on your desktop, but on the
But
server,
deployment?
you know,
But
only
deployment's
stat
not.
models and
Yeah.
Matplotlib and NumPy
Right.
and pandas, that's it.
Right.
They don't let anything else on there. So I had to completely rewrite.
Right. Has anybody ever used what is it called? QuickSense? Quick.
Oh, yeah,
Rick.
QI.
QLI.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Quick
That's
View
another
or something
popular
like that.
ClickView?
ClickView.
ClickView.
QuickView.
Yeah, I use it.
You use QuickView? QuickSense? QuickView? You like it?
I have nothing to compare with.
I mean, you create dashboards.
No, I wasn't like a user already. I mean, I know it's quick because it's all in memory.
It's all memory, right?
That's the, I guess.
Right.
So,
All right.
but
Yeah.
yeah.
So for like a general web distribution, sorry Joel, for a general web distribution, like not academic, like the New York Times, they're using D3, right?
Programming concept.
The New York Times uses D3.
Yeah.
You know
Like
why?
I said, I wasn't there last
Do
Sunday.
they try to guide there? So they
Because,
wrote it.
no, because Mike
And then you can't
Bostock,
show it because
creator of
it's not-
D3, came to New York Times as a graphics editor for 3 years.
Yeah, that's.
And
So
then
there's a
everybody,
setup,
and then
I mean-
it turned journalism upside down. But they said, how's the Times doing this?
I guess.
So everybody started doing it.
I
Probably
didn't do
close
it,
to
But
that.
I think, yeah, people are moving away from stuff like that, or?
Yeah, so they want.
I mean, I wonder, like, are people moving, that it's difficult to tie the web front end to the data?
Excel, if it's small.
Okay, so I think it all depends
It just might
where,
be
you know,
useful.
what space you're in.
What I would do if I were just.
You know, people don't learn D3 because it has a reputation of being hard or has a steep learning curve. Okay? So people in the JavaScript world, especially in React, are familiar with that.
Dash. So go to
Okay,
plot.
so especially, there's like
So go to.
There's like-
so if you learn that.
There's like 10 libraries in React
I was
that
not
charting
here.
libraries that are all sitting, all built on top of D3. And the only reason is to make it easier to use D3 in React. Because, you know, React and D3 both conflict talking to the DOM. That's the problem there.
Right.
So,
Now, go
and
to-
so if you're a React developer, I don't know.
Uh,
To me, I think you should know how to do it. You don't need any of those libraries. You should know how to make them. You know, if you really study, you can learn
And then
how
go
to
to
make
the
D3
dash
work with
after
React.
that.
Okay? But it's hard. Okay, and that's why all these libraries are created. And then there's this one guy who I really think is wonderful. He wrote one of the best books out there in D3. I gave a course in D3 here for the past 2 summers.
So
And
there
the
is
book
that
I
like
recommend
science.
everybody to called D3 in Action by Elijah Meeks. And
In
he created his own library where he worked with Netflix for React. Okay? On top of D3. So he's an expert in D3. He created it so people, it's an intuitive way of using D3 in React. Okay. And then it came to animation, and he said, it's too hard. He was trying to do the animation you can do in D3, you do it in React, and he said, it would take me the next 2 years to do it. So it depends on where you go. If you're, but as I said before, if you're a data
So
scientist,
this is manufacturing.
this is what companies want you to be able to do.
Actually,
Right?
So this is like.
I mean, quality's not hard to learn.
No,
Right.
it's cool, yeah.
And you can get this out there and get it done, fairly quickly.
Familiarize yourself with the
And
console.
for those people at the times, they are really, really good.
Yes.
Okay? And they have a way, they've created their own libraries in D3 to make,
Simulating something.
thank you for coming. They created their libraries in D3 to make it like faster, easier to work with, but they all do it in D3.
Live like this,
So,
you're looking at.
One should
sports
still, if
and-
one's interested in web
Yeah, but
visualization,
I like this.
one
So this is.
still invest.
But, so there's things, okay, there's also things like in the art world, in the advertising world, that there are things that you can only do, as he said. There's only things you can only do in D3, but D3 allows you to do
But let's say
anything.
if I.
Yes.
And it has the flexibility to do anything. It doesn't work with templates. All your other libraries make things simpler by creating templates that you just have to fill in.
Click on it,
Okay,
and it'll
but that's
filter.
limiting you there, right
You
there.
have to connect them.
So
I
if you
don't
want
see
the
that
full
here,
deal,
but,
you go with, you gotta learn D3.
All right.
I think it's still that way.
Um,
But most people don't have to know all that, If you just want to put out, and you know what,
That makes
Quality
sense.
puts out really nice graphs.
That you
I
might
think.
actually use.
Thank you.
So like this one,